Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is BecxReadz. Today, let's talk about the widely popular Fourth Wing. I, much like a lot of other people, did not have this book on my radar. I had never heard of it until it popped off, and then people were saying that it was Divergent meets How to Train Your Dragon with spice, set at like a training college. That was the extent of my knowledge on this book. So that right there sort of made me wary of picking it up because school settings, one of my least favorite settings ever. I do not like schools of any kind. Magic school, boarding school, college, high school. I don't enjoy them. Going to classes and training sequences, they bore me to tears, which is why I only have an associate's degree, because I was like, well, I'm good. I've done enough time. I'm out of here. See ya. So school settings just don't work for me. I have yet to find a book with a school setting that does, but I continuously pick them up thinking that maybe this will be the book that does it for me. Spoiler alert, it didn't. But I do love dragons, so I figured I would overlook the school setting because of the dragons. The best synopsis I can give you for this book is we are following a 20-year-old girl named Violet, who she has a condition where her bones dislocate and break really easily. Her family has a history of being dragon riders in this world, and she has no intention of doing it. She wants to be a scribe and just record history. But her mother forces her to go and risk her life to try and enter this training college where she will then train to become a dragon rider, hopefully. And when she gets there, she meets this young man who comes from a rivaling family, and they have a bit of a hate-to-love relationship. And we watch her as she goes through these trainings and she tries to eventually bond with a dragon, because if you bond with a dragon in this world, it's a very rare thing, and it unleashes a power that you can then use alongside your dragon to fight in this world's war. So should I start with the things I didn't like or the things that I did like? Let's start on the negative side. Let's start with the things that I did not like about this book. Buckle up, there's a lot. When I was reading this book, I really didn't understand the end goal of this plot. Like, what were we working to achieve? I didn't understand why these kids were forced into this training academy to try and bond with a dragon. Like, what was the point of doing that? Toward the end, that sort of became clearer, but for the longest time, I was like, what's the end goal here? Why are we doing this? And I even reached out to people who have loved this book, and I was like, could you explain this plot to me? Like, what's the goal here? And they couldn't even tell me that. I didn't understand why Violet's mother, who views her as this frail person because she does have this condition, why she would force her daughter into this training academy. Like, if you're proud of your family's history of being dragon riders, why would you then force the child that you don't see as strong into doing something that could tarnish your family's reputation? Didn't get it. Mother of the Year award, this woman, she's not even in the roster to win. And this world isn't set up very well. Now, I am not somebody who really cares all that much about world building, to be quite honest. I don't need to know the intricacies of the history of the world or how the magic works or anything like that. As long as I'm connected to the characters and I'm enjoying the ride, that's pretty much a background concern of mine. But in this book, I didn't enjoy any other aspect of it, so I really had to focus on like what this world looked like. And it wasn't set up very well. Our main girl, Violet, she has this tendency when she needs to focus on things to calm herself, she will recite world-building facts to us in a list, a lengthy list, in the dumbest moments. And I felt like that was just very lazy world building. It's worse than when you have two characters sitting down for a Q&A and you get your world building through that, because she's just listing stuff off. I zoned out a lot during her sequences because after the third thing she recited, it went on and on and on and on, and I got bored listening to it. Thankfully, she stopped doing this about chapter 20, and she never did it again that I recall listening to. thank God, because it got annoying. I had a lot of issues with these characters. When I read, I become the main character of a book. And in this situation, I did not become Violet because I did not have any connection to her. It was like an out-of-body experience for me where I was just floating over here watching myself listen to this audiobook. I was not an active participant in this story, mainly because these characters are supposedly 20-plus-year-olds, and to me, they did not come across like that. They felt like horny 16-year-old characters. Their dialogue was often very juvenile, and the amount of time that the female characters in this book spend ogling the male characters and saying how they want to get laid is ridiculous. I feel like this is something that male authors get a lot of shit about, is when they write their female counterparts, they are so focused on the way they look and over-sexualizing them. This book does exactly that, only it's the females that are over-sexualizing the male characters. So if you don't want me to be okay with the boys doing it, why would I be okay with the girls doing it? And just the horniness of these characters is so teenager. Like, I get it. Teenagers, most of them are horny beings. They think about sex a lot, okay? But these characters are supposed to be 20-year-olds in this situation where they are battling to their death pretty much. And all they can think about is, oh my God, he's so hot. I wonder what his hands would feel like going down my body. It does not make for a new adult story. It feels like a young adult story. And I didn't love that because I'm an adult. I don't want to imagine or see horny teenagers in action in real life and or fiction. I know it happens, but I don't want to read it and I don't want to see it. I am also constantly being told that Violet is frail and weak within the story simply because she has this condition that makes her bones dislocate and her muscles are weak. I'm not sure what the condition is. I probably zoned out and missed that. But I'm constantly told that she is frail and weak. However, she is out surviving people left and right in this story. And the times that she does get injured in this story, it's no different from any of the other characters within this story. She ends up like in the infirmary or something, but there's people dying. So her having this condition doesn't make her as weak and frail as I'm being told. I wish this author would have just leaned into her being this badass character who had good luck and was able to just deal with her condition that she had, instead of constantly beating me with the fact that everybody thinks she's weak and frail. She thinks she's weak and frail. She's weak and frail. Did I mention she's weak and frail because she's surviving? It's more telling me than showing me. She and this guy who are supposedly in this enemies to lovers relationship, they come from rivaling families. It felt very much Romeo and Juliet to me. You have the guy who he and his family did something that negatively affected the girl, and then you have the girl whose family did something that negatively affected the guy's family. That's the extent of their enemies. That's all they know about each other before they meet one another. They don't know anything personally about each other. And then when they meet each other, they're not trying to kill each other or hurt each other in any way. She excessively asks him, when are you going to kill me? Are you just going to kill me already? And he's always like, no, not today. That does not enemies make. In my opinion, enemies are people who are actively trying to kill each other or harm each other. This, if anything, is annoyance to love. That's what it is. It's like if I went to work and some guy that I rarely talk to, and just like his face or the way he breathes or the way he walks like annoys me, and I'm like, you're my enemy now. No, that's not enemies to lovers. They felt like two teenagers once again who just didn't like each other. And because we're going with the whole enemies to lovers trope, we have to have some tension between them, right? The tension is just them constantly arguing with one another. They don't agree about something, so they're right up in each other's faces, just like trying to banter with one another and one-up each other. That's the tension right there. And it felt so forced that I felt no chemistry between these characters. So when he starts using the cute little nickname Violence for her, because her name is Violet, my eyes dislocated from their sockets. I rolled them so hard. I feel like the endearment was picked out first and then her name was secondary to it. Because her nickname makes no sense to her character. She is not a violent character. She is a bleeding flippin' heart. She even says it multiple times within this story of how she doesn't want to kill anybody. She doesn't want to hurt anybody. It's like, babe, you are training for a war. You're gonna have to kill somebody eventually. And for her to get the nickname Violence, it felt very much like a prison nickname, you know? They call the big guy Tiny and the baby-faced kid Harry. That's what it felt like, because it did not match up with her personality at all. And as I mentioned, this is set in like a college-esque training school. I found myself zoning out when they would go to classes and learn about the history. I somewhat paid attention to the description of the dragons, but we'll get to that later on. And to top it off, I listened to this on audiobook, and the audio narration did nothing to make these characters seem like they were 20-year-olds. The audio narration sounded like these kids were 15, 16-year-olds. I also got tired of listening to the audio narrator swallow so frequently. I don't know if she was doing that intentionally to like convey Violet gulping nervously or something, but it was annoying to listen to. I also didn't love that at the end of this book, suddenly we get a chapter from Xaden, whatever that kid's name is. We get a chapter from his perspective. I feel like this would have been better had it been dual perspectives all the way through. But the big overarching thing, the major thing that I disliked was that I had expectations of this book that were not met. I thought that these were going to feel like adult characters. I thought that we would go through this training school, and then once they bonded with these dragons, then we would go off to war. And the action would pick up, and the romance would focus more along the lines of them, like, in different factions or whatever during war. That's not what I get. That's not what I get at all. In fact, when they bond with their dragons, they just go back to their training and school and classes, and I'm just like, ugh, I didn't love it. So, if you go in with the expectation that this is going to read like a YA, you might not hate it as much as I did. But let's move on to the positives, because I did like some things about this book. The first thing being the dragons. It's not hard for me to enjoy dragons. You could give me a book that mentions dragons like twice very vaguely, and I'd be like, I love this book, it has dragons in it. I liked these dragons' personalities. I liked how they were very protective of one another. I liked how they could telepathically speak between each other and their bonded person. I liked their descriptions. I liked how they were described using color. I wish there would have been more descriptions of them, but I liked what I got. I wish they would have played a bigger role in the story. Like, they do play an active role, don't get me wrong, but it feels like the dragons were secondary to this whole training school thing. And I would have liked had it been less school training crap and more dragon riding, fighting stuff, you know? I also really liked the smut scenes in this book. Now, I didn't like the chemistry between these characters, so listening to the smut scenes, it was just the wordage. There was no feeling for me at all there. But I liked the fact that there weren't any stupid, like, manhood, flower, pearl, nub, sheath, wet heat, you know, those sort of euphemisms used. I liked that. I also loved that she didn't taste like a fucking fruit or some honey, and I liked that he didn't, like, taste like midnight pine trees and salty caramel or whatever the hell a lot of fantasy romance men taste like. And I liked that after their first smut scene, Violet, for the first time, she felt like she was 20 years old. She maturely conveyed her emotions and feelings to Xaden, and she told him, you know, I'm already emotionally invested in this. I'm attracted to you. It's not going to be a hardship for me to fall in love with you. I appreciated that she said that and she spoke about her feelings that way. Him, however, he was a douche canoe because he was all like, don't fall in love with me. But then he turns around and he does stuff that is the opposite of somebody who doesn't want you to fall in love with them. Even though I didn't like it, I will say it does stand out from its other fantasy romance counterparts out there. There aren't any fae in this book yet. that I'm aware of. It doesn't have a stupid a blank and blank title. It doesn't have some fated mate situation going on yet. And for that, I think it definitely deserves the attention that it's getting because it is standing out amongst so many other things. So all in all, I ended up giving this 2.5 stars for my enjoyment because I do rate my books based on enjoyment. I give it 2 chili peppers for the smut, and I give it 0 beakers for chemistry. Now, do I think this is deserving of the hype that it's getting? Absolutely. Because lots of people love it, so therefore it's deserving of the hype that it's getting. Do I understand that hype? Absolutely freaking not. But I don't have to understand it for it to be true, you know? Do I think you should read it? If you're genuinely curious about this book and you think you are going to enjoy it, or if you just have FOMO and you want to read it to see what all the hype is about, definitely go for it. Based on the numbers, there's a high percentage that you will become obsessed and fall in love with this book. I just happen to be in the 2% minority of people who don't enjoy this book, mainly because my expectations were not met. And I figured to give my in-depth thoughts on something, I needed to read it entirely and not just half-ass it at 50% and then shit on this book because I didn't finish it out. But I will say, it's not the worst book I've ever read, and it's far from being the best. But there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Fourth Wing. Let me know down in the comments, have you read this book? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you meh about it? Let me know. But if you don't feel like commenting any of that, could you just leave me the dragon emoji if you've made it this far and want to let me know? So thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, I can't even say go read this book, but enjoy whatever you're reading. Bye.